Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Oh my gosh. I think there is the person who avoids survives short term. The person who instigates, who embraces, who manages to hold on to it and ride that ride out, they will survive long term.
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Sage Justice. Sage, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I am a performing artist, an author, and a poet, and I fuse art with activism.
Very nice with activism. So I'll throw one at you. I break the ice a lot of times with people wherever they're not expecting comedy. I tell them, listen, I got to tell you something. I got to make a confession. I'm an activist here, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then I get into the comedy. But
Yes.
is that similar?
Absolutely. I mean, so I have solo shows, one woman shows. My
Okay.
second show that I did was called To Breed or Not to Breed. And
Okay.
I interviewed 50 women from all over the world, all over the globe, real women, ages teens all the way to the 90s, about reproductive freedom or the lack thereof and how it affects them socially, politically, and personally. And so that's a form of activism. And then I also create proposals to help bridge the gap between conservatives and liberals, like with safety, gun safety. So my other proposal is for a DFE, which would be a Department of Firearms Education, just like we have DMV. And so that
Right.
way we honor those who want the Second Amendment, want to own their guns, but we're also protecting those who do not want to be a target for those stray bullets, so to speak. So yeah, thinking if we had a place that was like a DMV, but for guns, you have educational courses like, gun education instead of driver's ed, gun ed. You learn about safety, you get licensing, you get registration, you have a screening process through insurance. And so, yeah, so I have a whole plan. So and I try to incorporate art and comedy and characters to stand in the middle to see all sides.
Well, I mean that's super intriguing. Do you not see perhaps that the separation of society may actually may hold you back a little bit? That not just the political, but that the worlds are splitting.
Yeah, I kind of see my position in the world right now to be a bridge builder, not a
Uh,
peacemaker per se,
right.
just a bridge builder.
Nice.
I feel like I have a foot in each side, just
Yeah.
from my own upbringing. And let me try to bring these two together. So just that we can see our oneness and not get so caught up in our differences. I really think that a lot of people are tired of that. I don't think I'm alone.
I love it. Awesome, awesome, Sage. So you ready to get started?
Yes.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any joke. So Sage, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
I love these questions that you came up with, and I'm not sure. So this is my belief is I grew up in a household, my grandparents raised me, My papa was a joke teller. He even had a book, Uncle Reggie Jokes, that he had published. My grandmother was a naturally funny person who told jokes, but her sense of humor was very wry. So I would say at home, I was a natural born comedian in that environment versus I was never one like my papa to go tell jokes. So I think that sometimes in safe spaces, I would say I'm a comedian. On stage with the characters, then maybe comic.
Interesting. All right. So, I mean, the separation of words, right? Okay, let's start with the first question. So, how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
I think you can't be a character and call it, you can't have an identity and say I'm a comedian and then be a character unless you're like, oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. Latka, Taxi, why am I forgetting his name? Brilliant, maybe manic performer who embodied, Jim Carrey played him in person. I don't know why his name just escapes
Oh,
me.
yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Norm McDonald. Norm
No,
McDonald.
no, not Norm Macdonald,
Not,
but that's
did
a
he play Norm?
no, no. Going all
Jim
the
Carrey
this
didn't play Norm McDonald? Didn't he play Norm McDonald? I thought
I
he
don't
did.
know,
Oh,
maybe, but he played oh my gosh. I can't believe from the old 70s TV show Taxi. But
right,
so
right.
the actor, and I'm so sorry I can't remember your name right now.
Yeah.
He would come out as a character, and so when that was the commitment. So his comedy was as this character, and there was someone very different behind the scenes. But I think most comedians, and I go back to the greats from George Carlin, and or even just now like Dave Chappelle. I don't think they're characters. I think they are who they are. What you see is what you get. But of course there are some, but the people who are like have a shtick and they're a character, wouldn't you put that under comics of that like joke thing?
Possibly. Yeah, I love that we're getting into this detail. So, personally, I guess how I'm imagining this comedic character is when it's the acting component where they're actually recalling a memory, right? And you're watching them recall a memory, right? And so, as a technique, as an acting technique, and if that's all you do, then to me, you're a comedic character. Would you
Mm,
agree?
okay.
It's one
Um,
specific thing.
I don't know. I don't know if you're recalling a memory. You're telling a story. I'm following you. So I'm taking your road. So
Right.
you're on stage, you're having a memory because you're telling the story. But in the moment when the audience is, you're getting the hecklers, or you're getting the feedback, or you get the laughter in the place you didn't expect it, you're no longer in the memory. You're present.
Of course. Right, right. All I'm saying is that when you're actually saying the lines, is that's when you're performing in a sense, right?
True.
Not when you're listening, not when you're getting the feedback. It's a small detail, but if we're going to go into the character component, that's why I would say the comedian is most likely in the comedic character role.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll
All
go with
right,
it.
all right, all right. So does authenticity matter, or is the illusion part of the magic?
Both.
Right.
Absolutely both. You have to be authentic. If you're not, no one's going that you lose people immediately. The minute you show up with it as an actor and without your authenticity, I think you lose the audience on some level, almost completely. But the illusion, of course, is part of it. I think that's just the craft. So I do think that you need both. But without authenticity, I don't know. For maybe it's just me being a very sensitive, highly sensitive person or in tune or whatever. But if I'm in the presence of someone where I do not feel they are authentic, I tend to walk away.
No, I agree with that one. All right, punching up, punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let me put it in some historical context.
Okay.
Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Mm. I mean, that sounds right to me.
So did it
uh,
did it happen? I don't know.
I
Is this
don't
a fact?
know. I think that jealousy comes from a sense of feeling threatened.
Mhm.
So the component that creates jealousy is the same component that creates inspiration. So either a person has this reaction to what's happening and it makes them angry because they feel threatened and therefore they want to take away what they see someone else have, or they feel inspired and they want to go for it. So they're not trying to take away from anyone. They just want to elevate themselves to another level.
Okay. So is the audience's agreement with the comedian a form of permission or alignment?
Again, I'd say both, but I think it
Right.
first begins with permission. Like
Okay.
we align with what we give permission to, permission for. So there's not going to be any alignment without first some subconscious level of permission, which I think goes back to the authenticity. So if I'm with someone, I feel that they're being authentic. Now I'm giving them permission to have my attention. And then with that I want to be aligned. I don't want to give my attention and my presence to someone I'm not aligned with, because then I'd be wasting my time.
So, obviously in a comedy club, it's going to be tough to align with all of the audience unless it's
Yes.
very niche. So is that where the permission would come in?
I think we make a conscious choice. If I'm going to a comedy club and I have to pay $20 for the cover charge or 2 drink minimum or whatever, I'm telling myself before I sit down, I'm going to have fun.
Right.
So
Yep.
whether the person stinks or not, I'm going to choose to have fun. I had an experience last year at a place where there were some issues, but it cost me so much with money and time and all this that I just decided I'm going to consciously overlook these things so that I can be present and enjoy as much as possible. And then the memory of that situation is that all the good was much bigger than whatever the annoyances were.
Okay. All right. All right. Here now we're going to get into it. So cultural translation of comedy. So how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Well, yeah, what you just said, the context. If another culture doesn't have that context, then it's not going to work. And so then what comics rely on are two things: commonalities and the rhythm of the landing. So we all know we're hearing a da 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 da. It's a rhythm, da 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 da, and da da da. And then
Mhm.
the audience will laugh even if they don't speak your language and they don't know what you're talking about. We're using our body, we're using our facial expressions, we have a rhythm, and I think that's kind of universal globally with most comics. And that's what we tell the audience where we're expecting the laughter to come from, depending on how you are as a performer. Either you're somebody who just flies by the seat of your pants, it's going to be different every night, or you have a set. You have your 5 minute set, your 6 minute, your 20-minute set, whatever. Where you're expecting the laughs, and then where to punch up.
All right, we're going to stick with the cultural translation. So,
Okay.
how different would it be if the same thing started looking now like it would not change if nothing else really did?
You're going to have to repeat that.
Okay, you already know the answer to this one, so I'm going to move on because you figured it out right away. So,
Okay.
are comics more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Yes, I think so. I do. I
Uh-huh.
think that when I think of culturally specific, I do think of George Carlin, Dave Chappelle, Richard Pryor, so many. And then there are comics I think of like Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, I'm going way back. I don't have
Yeah.
a lot of people right now that I could just name off the top of my head that I would say are, comics. I think a lot of people are just fumbling. They're looking for their place. And it takes you like 20 years to really, I think, find your place, get comfortable with yourself, and not apologize for who you are, and just know that you're going to find your audience, being your true self.
That's where I kind of put the comic in a lot of sense, and it's
Yeah.
just for the performer recognizing that that's kind of where they are, even if they do dabble in the character work that I was alluding to. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right, crowd work versus crafted work. So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
See, I think I'm seeing them the opposite of you. I think
Okay.
I'm seeing the comedian be the person who is culturally specific and riffing, and I'm seeing the comic in my head as the person who has a routine, has their characters, has their set, and has maybe a more global thing. But I don't know. I'm dyslexic, so maybe everything I say may be totally in alignment with you, but just the back
Yeah,
of
it's a strange word game. So I didn't come up with this concept. It's from doing stand up and having in that environment. People with more experience came up with this separation between the comic and comedian. And
yeah.
so from that perspective is where I'm coming from. And even then, it was like you hear it a few times before you recognize that like what they're talking about has any relevance. But well, if you keep looking at it, it eventually does. All right.
I always felt
So
more comfortable calling myself a comic versus a comedian. I always felt like a comedian was like a level above me, that it just felt like I didn't feel like I'm not that funny. I can be funny, but and I'm funny maybe around my family and friends, but that's a different kind of funny. It's not something you can bank on for laughs. So I don't know. It's funny how we're talking about this when you start the labels words have and the power they have
yeah.
and those.
That's right. That's why it's so even when I define it my way, but you have a different mental picture, right? And so
Right.
it's very, that's part of the reason why I find this interesting because it really can diverge quite a bit. All right. Very important question. Advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast to get the message out today. See you soon.
I never see my magician friends advertising. But I guess when they start doing magic in places, public places, I guess that's a form of advertising. But I remember, going to the Magic Castle. None of those people had ever given me their promo cards. It was like they
Mhm.
got to the place, and the place is what brings the people in. And then for comics and comedians, I mean, I think everybody has to do self-promotion right now and the way the world is today, unless you already are so established and then you just have a residency somewhere in Vegas or whatever, and they do all the promotion for you.
So is self promotion seen as selling out, or is it necessary for survival?
Context dependent, yeah, going back to Dave Chappelle, it's it when you're expected to sacrifice your integrity in any way whatsoever, and you do so for the money or whatever, then you're selling out. If you can hold on to your integrity while self-promoting, which is God willing, that's what I hope I do, then you're not selling out. You're just trying to let people know that you exist and that maybe who you are and what you have to offer is exactly what they need to hear, because there's an alignment there and they could use that validation or that support in just knowing that you're in the world.
So, as an example of selling out, would it be like telling jokes that you wouldn't normally want to, but someone wrote it and they're like, tell this joke?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I mean,
Right.
again,
What if
context.
it's not a bad joke? It just doesn't fit
Yeah,
with your
if it's
style.
not a bad joke, it's not a bad joke. It's not hurting anybody. It's not going to hurt me. And someone says, I'll give you 20 grand to tell this joke. I'm going to tell that joke. And I don't think I'm selling out. And it's kind of the using the concept of the ends justifies the means in contrast to integrity, and where do those two paths intersect. And one of the things I wrote about in my book, Freedom, is as I say, if you are stealing from a bread maker, you're skimming off the top of the books, then and you believe the ends justifies the means and it's to have a Rolex or whatever, then you're committing a crime and you're harming your own integrity. But if you're stealing a loaf of bread, like in Les Miserables, and you're hungry, you have to eat. I see that as an ends that justifies the means, that literally does justify it.
All right. All right. How about, yeah, with you on that. So, censorship and offense. Does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
Mm, that's a very good question. I really like this question. Ooh. Okay. So which one is the one who courts it? The comedian or the comic?
Well, uh, I would say that the comic avoids offense and a comedian courts it, but you may see it the other way around because the words can be interchangeable.
Right. But see, I like that. So then would you say Chappelle is a comedian or a comic?
I would say he's a comedian
Yes.
for many, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in alignment, so I get it now. And I agree. I think that see, and I find myself somewhere in the middle. I had done this the first time I did this show years ago. I was able to do all the different characters, the different accents from people from Africa and Asia and whatnot. I could not do that today. I would be
Mhm.
canceled immediately and no one would let
Right.
me perform at their venue anymore. So it's, unless you have clout, again, sometimes you're forced. You might be a comedian, you're forced into being a comic to work, but then and if you have enough clout, then you can court controversy, which is what I prefer to do.
Ah, all right. So then who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Oh my gosh. I think there is the person who avoids survives short term. The person who instigates, who embraces, who manages to hold on to it and ride that ride out, they will survive long term.
All right. All right. Timing and delivery, science or art? So do comics rely more on structure and comedians more on rhythm and emotion?
Yes. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
simple, easy one. Absolutely. You
All
have
right.
to, it is a science. We know the rule of three, we know the rhythm, we know the beats. But because everything is energy. And like if you're in an audience, you can feel the shift of the room. I remember having to perform around the time of the not the a mass shooting. I don't remember what
Mhm.
it was, but there with where there were the children, and it was around Christmas time. And nothing I was going to do that day was going to work. And you have, so it doesn't matter the science of how it had been planned, because the energy had shifted and changed. And you
Right.
have to have both skills, you really do.
So in those scenarios, I'm thinking maybe that amnesia, temporary amnesia, could be a potential. It's just as like a technical thing because I've actually been to many shows where there at that day or that week has been some historical events that would otherwise overshadow. But if you show up at a comedy club, I mean, to some degree, I think it's acceptable to not necessarily let that energy get you down. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. If the audience is showing up there, they want to be distracted. They want to escape, and they want to have that. But your material, like for example, I think, was it after 9/11? I can't remember what the timing was of there was some shooting, and Hamilton was supposed to perform on SNL, and that
Okay.
it was that day or the day before, so they decided to not use the guns in
Oh
their
yeah.
routine. And so it's like, yes, this audience came to be distracted and entertained, but also we still have to be culturally sensitive. That's what I really think. I hate censorship. I
Right.
hate politically correctness. I understand it has its place, but I really think it's ruining the comedy world. I think we're all better off for nobody should be able to say hate speech, but that's very different from hurting your feelings speech. Like when I was growing up, I mean, that's what comedy was. And I think that I just think we're at a time where it's very tricky. I'm not so sure. I believe in things like trigger warnings, for example, and things like that. But you do have to balance it. I don't like the extremes. I think we go to the extremes to find the middle. And yeah, with comedy, that's the sweet spot. But you always have to be on your toes. You're an improv performer when you're a comic.
Right. I can imagine perhaps less improv, more strategic is things that could potentially trigger people, gunshots in Hamilton. Was there a way that before it even could have been an issue that it could be addressed? And the answer is, well, you have to write it that way. But how would you even conceive that this could be something in the future that could be part of the 24-hour news cycle and it kind of holds you back all of a sudden now that you're performing? So it's hard to decide,
I
what
think
to do.
yeah, that's exactly where we are right now. People are, because cancel culture was so effective, people are afraid to be cringe. But if we
Mhm.
don't embrace being cringe, we are losing our humanity. Like everybody should be embracing cringe.
That's actually that's kind of my point is like when the gunshot, like instead of the gunshot kind of speaking for itself, you have to all be reflective on that before
Yeah.
it even it's part of the whole thing. So it's very like Macbeth is, I think, probably a really
Yeah.
good example. It's very reflective in the moment, and you're just like watching, like, wow, okay, it's a bit much. Okay, we'll move. Shall we move on? No, Sage, shall we enter the multiverse?
I love the multiverse.
All right, here we go. Board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So, if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Oh my gosh. This is like philosophical comedy. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I really think both at different levels. I would prefer to be the first. I
Okay.
the former versus the latter.
Right. Well, it's a game show, so you got to choose your character. It's like Monopoly. You got to pick a character. So you're
My
going with the color.
character would create themes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the colorist probably would be the right one. So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Give me an example.
Well, visual versus audio.
They both matter, but I'm more
They
visual.
do.
Yeah, I'm more of a visual performer. Even, like Jim Carrey, I think about him in his early days of comedy. He was literally both equally. Like I don't know if
Hmm.
you ever got to see some of his old work, but his face, what he could do, but
Oh
also
yeah.
the sound effects and stuff that he would make.
Oh yeah.
But
Jimmy.
yeah,
100%. I mean, that's a great example. Yeah, I have seen some of his work, but he's always been doing that. He's always like right on the money when it comes to that.
yeah,
All
because
right.
he's so present.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, his this whole thing about the memory thing, he's doing it in the present tense. So I don't know.
Yes.
I'm trying to psychoanalyze his method because
So
it's
would
so
you call him
consistent.
a comic or a comedian?
Um, well, I mean, he's acting is really on point, so it's comedic character at the least. But I think he's not remembering a memory. Like we're watching and remember, I think it's in the present tense. So he's compressed the timeline so much that he's doing the same technique, but even better than anyone else can do it. So
Yeah.
he's a comedian from my
Yeah.
perspective. So
I agree.
all right, so here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Cesar Del Castillo. And his question for you, Sage, is what is the best outcome you are looking for?
To have a lasting impact. I want the audience to walk away remembering that evening, whether they remember the laughter, whether they remember being offended by something, whether they remember, being inspired. I want to walk away. I want to leave them with impact.
All right. Nice. All right, last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Always comedians.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, do you think George Burns, I mean, we're really going back now, like George Burns and Gracie Allen, they would probably be, a comic duo. This is their like from the 40s, late 40s, early 50s. And people do remember George Burns, and there was so much charm. People remember charm, but I do think overall it's going to be the comedians, the ones who can pierce you in the heart and make you while you're laughing. Those are the ones who are going to be remembered.
All right. Awesome. Well, Sage, where can everybody find you online?
Oh, well, I'd love for people to come over to sagejustice.substack.com. I'm at Substack every day. My website is sagewords.org, and I have an Audible coming out very soon in a few weeks for my book, Freedom. So if you want to create a life you don't need a vacation from, and it's not a how-to book, it's my own personal journey of having a diagnosis of you're going to die by this point, and so then writing everything I wanted to for my daughter to have before I died, and then I survived, and then reading the book myself for myself and going, wow, this really works, and then doing it, and then going on this amazing dream experience throughout Europe. So it's kind of a little roadmap from me to the audience, and I hope people will listen to it because it definitely changed my life. But yeah, I'm not big on the how-to and the self-help. It's just my own personal journey of alchemy, you can say.
All right. Awesome. Well, Sage, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone else, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks for having me.